You're listening to the Second Look podcast, where we take a closer look at what we're learning each Sunday at Connection Church to help you grow in your walk with Christ. Here are your hosts, Pastor Joe Terreri and Pastor Dan DeRochers.
Welcome to the Second Look. My name is Dan.
And I'm Joe.
And we're here talking about anger. No, not from Inside Out. Not the character.
No.
Because it wasn't capitalized.
Right.
The emotion, the actual bona fide, real anger, sin-producing thing
Yes.
in our life.
That's what we're talking about.
But first,
Why are you so angry, Dan?
I ask myself that all the time.
Yeah, like, why are you so angry? Now, Dan, explain to all of us. Now, listen, don't email us about this, but like, we make a lot of jokes about the enneagram.
Yes.
Okay, so like, we sort of are helped by it. Don't put a lot of stock into it, and yet we find it being right, and we don't think it's based on witchcraft. So just everyone relax. But Dan, your Enneagram number is
Number 9.
9,
Yes.
which is interestingly a Enneagram number most common with presidents, not our current one, but in the past.
Not at
yes,
all.
yeah,
Yeah, because it's the diplomat.
Yes.
Right? It's and I actually wrote in my notes, I left out as an Enneagram 9 in my notes, actually, because I didn't want to bring it up again.
No, but my wife is also an Enneagram 9.
Yeah, it's people that are generally conflict averse.
Yes.
And that are diplomatic. We see
Yes.
things from all sides of the argument and rarely take a side.
Yes.
But sometimes we do.
Yes. But one of the things that they say in the Enneagram, which is my only Enneagram fact that I remember, is nines deal. Nines actually, like, so my wife Cheryl, she's a 9. She's incredibly kind. You're a 9. You're mostly kind, and so one of the things I love about the Enneagram 9 is they say that like they fall asleep a lot because of the unresolved anger. And so my wife, we cannot get through any show without her falling asleep within the first 10 minutes, and she'll just wake up, and I'm like, "What are you so angry about?" And it's just like, it's one of my favorite tropes in our marriage, because I am never falling asleep due to the anger. I am always ramped up. But Dan, why are you so angry? Back to the question.
Joe, I do need to share an anger story.
About you?
About me.
Oh, this is nice. I'm usually the one putting it.
And it's actually sort of like the story that you shared.
Yes.
I'm angry that you just kicked that light right there.
I'm sorry. Keep going.
When I was early in my career, I was a college professor at the University of Valley Forge.
Wow.
And I was angry.
Yes.
And I was a digital media professor.
Yes.
And there was, we were in a lot of like high stress production environments.
Yes.
And so there were a lot of decisions that had to be made very quickly, very often.
And you had to make them.
And I had to make them.
Yes.
And also I really tried to treat all of my students like this is a professional environment. And so there was just a lot of like tension, high stress, high expectations. The result
was there swearing?
Tim, was there swearing? I don't think so. Yeah,
Okay,
Tim
all
doesn't
right.
remember. I don't think there was.
Okay, good.
At least not by me.
Yeah.
There probably was a
Yes.
lot of swearing
Yeah, okay.
under the breath.
Yes.
Because it actually turned into anger.
Okay.
And I sort of excused it in some ways that it was like, we're trying to be pro and it's a high pressure environment. And there was like this sort of come to Jesus moment where some of the students that were very close to me, we were getting together and they were like, "Hey, just wanted to let you know people don't like being around you.
Wow.
People are scared of you."
I'm glad someone said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
And
And their names were Anna, Paisley, and Piper.
they were angry this morning.
No.
But it was actually a turning point in my life and career where it was like, oh, yeah, I don't actually have to be this way.
No. You know what? In that statement, I don't actually have to do this, is really important, because there's lots of reasons people get angry. And, you know, sometimes there's like invisible loyalties that are going on. Like, well, I have to be this way because I'm actually playing this role, and so when I'm in this role, I kind of have to be a jerk. I have to be angry, and then there's these moments where it's like something happens, and you're like, well, if no one's angry, I got to play the part of the angry person because this moment deserves some anger.
Yep.
And I think that can work with anxiety. Like, well, if no one's worried about this, I need to be worried about this.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. So I think anger can kind of function in the same way. So did you find after that moment that you were able to find freedom from it?
yes, but not by myself.
Yeah.
It actually, God did a deep work in my life. It was 2013. Like,
Wow.
I remember the moment, and I remember how the Lord really ministered to me,
Yeah.
and completely changed my life and changed my approach.
Yeah.
And the trust with my students was not built back immediately.
Sure.
At all.
Sure.
I probably left some hurt.
Definitely.
I know I left hurt
Sure.
in the wake of my anger.
Yep.
And I've had subsequent conversations. In fact, I had a conversation in the last probably 2 years with someone who attends here who was one of my students, who we patched things up because there were some really hurtful things that I said and did. And but I couldn't have done it on my own, Joe.
No, and I think it's interesting. I was preaching yesterday, and I had this moment. This happens to me. Like, I'm preaching, I'm like realizing things as I'm preaching. Like, for example, I did not say this in the first service, but I said it in the second service and the third service when I said, like, how do we get free from our anger? One of the things I talked about is like, when you feel yourself getting angry, stop and ask yourself this question: why am I so angry? Well, it took me an entire service to realize that's the exact question that God had asked Cain. And so,
oh, wow.
And I say that to set up this statement. All the sins that we're talking about, the truth is, spoiler alert, when we talk about how to find freedom from them, you have to join with God.
Yeah.
We are not overcoming any sin in our life, whether it's sloth or whether it's lust, whether it's greed. We cannot do this without God's help. And I'm not saying that, every sermon's gonna be the exact same, but there is this sense where the sanctification process, dealing with our sin, has to be it's a partnership with God. So, and it's not you do your part, God does his. That it's not a transactional. It's almost like it's about submission. It's like, God, I actually need you to come in and do the work in my life. And so that's a really awesome testimony, Dan. And I've seen the same thing in my life. And you pick up patterns growing up of just watching people respond in anger, and then you're like, I'm never doing that, and then you're like, oh, I'm doing that. And so we see how anger gets into our hearts and into our reactions and into our relationships, and it's a major issue for many of us. And one thing I want to just I was talking with one of the members of our worship team in between services yesterday, and he had a really good point, and that's something, like, he said something that I was actually thinking about. And I didn't say this in any message yesterday, but we need to make sure we don't think about anger just in terms of like outbursts and rage. There is a low level of like seething anger or quiet anger, or, like, hey, my anger is never going to come out because I'm, that's not my personality. But and I don't mean to be stereotype anyone, but there can be that kind of like introverted anger.
Yeah. And
so we just need to be aware that anger is not just when I raise my voice and shout. It can also be when I seethe and stew and no one knows.
I thought it was interesting towards the end of your message how you were like defining rage and malice and like all of these things. Like, wow, there's a lot of ways to describe anger.
Yeah,
it's a very rich thing.
I know. Well, and it's all the different ways that it can come out.
But there also is sort of that outbursty anger, like that emotion that comes out. And like, thinking as a spouse or as a parent, like, we know in that moment, we know we're going to say something we regret.
Yeah.
We know we're going to have to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
We know the explosion's not going to be worth it.
Nope.
And yet we give in. Why?
Because we think it's needed. Because we think it's, we either, well, first of all, I would say when you think about it psychologically, that neural pathway in your life is just, that's a really, you're creating, or that
it's like a superhighway.
It's like a superhighway. It's a well-worn path. It's like, hey, when A happens, when A happens to me, here's B, B is definitely coming. And so I think that there's just a reality that we get used to reacting. And so that's really where the Lord needs to come to work, where we anger is actually a battle for different reactions. And so I think that's part of it, is even when we know, like, there's even a phrase for it, blind rage. Like reason leaves you and self-control leaves you, and all of a sudden it's almost like, well, I can't stop, I gotta do it, it's happening, and it almost feels like people say like, oh, I can't stop myself, something quote came over me. And so I think that can happen to people, and so that's why the work of growing in the Lord, these need to become matters of prayer in our life, and not trying to fight them like making it a point to actually work on your anger when you're not angry. That's what I'm trying to say.
I want to tiptoe into another topic a little bit. You read a John Stott quote that starts with, "There's a great need in the contemporary world for more Christian anger."
I know. I hesitated to read that because there's a little bit of like a mixed message. Yeah. But listen, okay. So like some of the greatest movements in the world for human rights have started with righteous anger. Like, I don't think we have the civil rights movement without righteous anger. I don't think we have the abolition of slavery without anger. Like, it is a good thing for Christians to say. I don't think we have people who are passionate about the unborn and fighting for the rights of the unborn. I don't think we have those movements without righteous anger. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, there has to be a part of us as God's people that looks into the world and says, that ought not to be.
Yeah.
And so, I think there's some, talk about tiptoeing, I think there's some things that's happened recently in our world that fire me up. And it's like, that should not be how we do things in this country. Like, and so, and you may be like, well, is that political? It's like, no, that's just antithetical to Jesus. And so I'll say what I mean and mean what I say. I think it's wonderful that we can have debates about immigration reform, and I think that as a nation we have a right to do that. But how we go about enforcing those things when we're dehumanizing other people, that makes me upset as a follower of Jesus. And that's not a political statement. That's actually just in reality, no matter if people are in the country legally or not, they deserve to be treated as human beings with rights and with respect and like made in the image of God. And so that's a modern example, but I would also say when I see people mar God's design for marriage, that makes me upset. When I see people infringe on the rights of the unborn, that makes me upset. When I see blatant racism, that makes me upset. And so as a Christian, there are things that do like inflame my anger, and unrighteousness and evil and sin should do that.
Okay. But in our cultural and media landscape, anger gets eyeballs.
Yeah.
There are so many studies
that
show that it actually, it's not feel-good stories that get clicks and views and sell ads.
Right.
It's anger.
Right.
It's actually firing people up that gets more eyeballs. So what do you think about our current media environment, about the way that we experience the world through the lens and through our screens? And how do we as Christians engage in those things that you're talking about, but not stay angry all the time about everything?
Well, I want to say a couple things. I think when it comes to our anger, I think we need to be careful what we're feeding our anger, because anger can become an appetite that is feasting on whatever. So I came across this incredible quote by a different John Tyson, who's sort of
John
like,
Stossel.
Yeah, John Tyson, who's sort of like a modern day John Stott. And so I want to read this quote from John Tyson, and I'm going to tell you where he landed in this article. So this article is written, he writes a weekly email, and it's geared towards men, but I think this applies to both men and women. And so it's a bit long, but stay with me here. He says, I am constantly asked as a pastor to give my opinion on cultural events. This includes ICE, the new mayor of New York, Israel and Palestine, LGBTQ rights, Russia and Ukraine, AI and discipleship, economics, and the nuclear family. This is just to name a few. I understand this and do my best to serve our people as they are looking for a biblical perspective from someone they perceive as having some measure of fluency on cultural issues. We do need perspective, because we are being manipulated by the mainstream media in insidious ways. I am not a conspiracy theory kind of man, but I am an observant one. And the headlines are being carefully crafted to make you hate your political opponents, demonize those who disagree with you, frame issues in ways that favor and bias you towards the views they want you to hold, and above all, monetize your attention. Social media is not helping at all either. We see a quick clip taken out of context, emotional speeches designed to reduce discernment, and a mind-numbing overlap of the trivial, profane, and hilarious in a 15-minute scroll. We are not better men for this. This is leaving us misinformed, overwhelmed, angry, and anxious. It's making us dismiss people we should love, mock people who deserve compassion, and deform us into reactive, angry men.
Wow.
And so Tyson goes on to make the point that what we actually need is to become men, and I'll add, and women of prayer. That what actually is needed in our cultural moment. And so this goes back to your question about unrighteous and righteous anger. Righteous anger, we need to acknowledge something about our righteous anger. We actually can't fix 99.99% of the world's problems. Like, even when I see, for example, something on the news that makes me upset, and this is no matter what that is, we need to be able to know what to do with that anger. And we don't take that anger online. Now listen, here are your options. You can run for office. You can go to a protest. That's fine. Like, okay, these are all your rights as a citizen. And you can go and spout off online and get into arguments with strangers and ruin Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter for your family and, make your grandkids afraid. Or you can actually bring these things to the Lord. And what is missing in the church is lament and bringing these things to God and making them matters of prayer. Because what does 2 Chronicles 7:14 say? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, I will hear from heaven and I will heal their land. Meaning that where do we bring our righteous anger, and how do we keep it from becoming unrighteous? We turn righteous anger into prayer. And if you want to turn righteous anger into activism, that's like, as I've said, there's been some things that have changed because of activism. So I am not anti-activism. However, if activism makes you hate other people, that's not from the heart of God. If activism makes you think that your battle is against flesh and bone and not against the principalities and powers of the unseen world, you are not walking in the principles of the kingdom of God. So we need to understand that these are spiritual warfare issues, and we don't fight with the weapons the world fights with. We don't get out our guns. We get on our knees and pray. We use the truth of God's word. We extinguish the enemy's fiery darts with the shield of faith. And so this is why the kingdom of God is so countercultural.
If I could just sum that up, just to bounce it off of you to make sure I'm understanding it. Sometimes it can feel like we want to do something, and prayer is doing something, because we can't solve the problems, but God can. But if we want to do something and actually put feet to what we're doing, beyond prayer, which is a thing to do, we have to make it, and it's not only about being for something, you can also be against something. But in our hearts, we have to check and make sure we are for and against something, not some ones.
Well, and this is what we need to understand. In our quest for justice, we can become the unjust ones. In our quest for justice, we can inadvertently become villains when we are thinking we are God's agents to execute his justice in the world.
Can you explain that?
Yes. Romans 12. Do not get angry, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath. Vengeance is mine, says the Lord. So when we are people, like, and listen, if you want to go into law enforcement, if you want to become a lawyer, if you want to work to be a judge, like, these are all things Christians can and should do. So I'm not saying do nothing and pray.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is recognize how we actually become less like Jesus if we think that becoming a justice warrior is our like only option. And so like I think someone who modeled this so well is Martin Luther King Jr. That's why he's one of our national heroes, because no, we should not sit on our hands and allow African American people to be oppressed in this country. But he was always like preaching against hate, even for those who were oppressing him. And listen, I know Martin Luther King Jr. was not a paragon of moral virtue in every area of his life. Okay, good, you win that part. But he was someone who was showing us how to be an activist with a heart of love and trying to bring healing, not demonization. And we need to be careful because this happens on both sides of the aisle. Like, no matter where you're at politically, you can think, if you're on the left, that Donald Trump is the greatest enemy in the world. And if you're on the right, you can think Democrats and the new mayor of New York are the worst kind of people in the world. And I would just say, no, you're missing it. Like, we need to understand that there is an enemy. And the enemy is Satan. And what Satan wants us to do is to believe that we need to fight against people. And I do think we should vote. I think we should vote our consciences. But sometimes we're so angry because we actually are powerless in these situations. And that's why, and just please hear me, even if you're disagreeing and you're listening, and you might be disagreeing with some things I'm saying, you can't disagree with this. Are you prayerful? Like, and I'm not just saying like, bless him, Lord. I'm saying like, are you a person of prayer when you find yourself getting angry about the things that you're seeing? Because the truth is there is unrighteousness everywhere. There's unrighteousness on the right, big time. And there is unrighteousness on the left, big time. And there is unrighteousness in the world and around the globe. And so like anger and feeding your soul, that constant stream of unrighteousness in the world, will make you angry and will make you actually less loving. And that is not the call of a Christian.
Joe, why are you so angry right now?
I'm not. I'm just passionate that we wouldn't. I'm passionate that we wouldn't. Like, we have a call to. We are ambassadors for Christ.
Yeah.
Like 2 Corinthians 5, like we are messengers of reconciliation.
Yeah.
It's really tough to be a messenger of reconciliation when you're ticked off at everybody. It's really tough to be a messenger of reconciliation when you hate Democrats or you hate Republicans, when you hate a different race. You cannot be. When you don't like illegal aliens, you are no longer a messenger of reconciliation. So am I mad? No, I'm just like, hey, we need to get this part right. And this is one of the major things missing in the evangelical church in the West right now. I mean, some people build their entire ministries on partisan politics. And I am constantly saying that's not a church.
Yeah.
That is something wholly different than what Jesus died for. So we need to go back to the text. We need to wrestle with it. We need to say, yes, politics matter, and we shouldn't bury our head in the sand. But what's our role in all of this? Our role is to be salt and light, and shining the light of Jesus, not just on the things we care about, but on all the things that are close to the heart of God.
Well, this has been another episode of The Second Look. You can catch this sermon and so much more at our website, cometoconnect.com. Have a great week.